So great to see all of you. We're happy that you are taking the time now to listen to what we brought to you. And I would quickly like to introduce the speakers. Ingo, if we would switch to the next slide. So with me, as always, Buynomics co-founder and managing director Ingo Reinhardt, with more than 15 years experience in pricing and revenue growth management. Previously worked at Simon Kucher. And he developed the Buynomics method and is obviously a usual guest, a usual speaker in our webinars. And we have Ivan Tretyakov, Director Innovation at Buynomics, led the RGM team at Danone for the past 6 years and worked at CPG Consulting at Coca-Cola. Then quickly on Buynomics, who we are and what we are doing on the next slide. At Buynomics, we help companies make smarter and faster RGM decisions. Our virtual shopper AI technology simulates real-world shopper behavior with up to 95% predictive accuracy. We enable holistic optimization of pricing of all 5 RGM levers, basically pricing, promo, PPA, portfolio mix, and costs, while accounting for competitive dynamics and retailer pressures. Our customers, including Nestle, Unilever, and L'Oreal, see up to 4% higher gross profits and save up to 90% of their time spent on analysis. And if you're always interested in tackling your RGM challenges together, feel free to book a demo on our website or email us directly, and we can agree on a one-on-one chat. And without further ado, I say the stage is yours. Ivan and Ingo, I will go into the chat and moderate the questions.
Thank you. So as Jonathan mentioned, my name is Ivan. I worked 6 years, so I spent the last 6 years at Danone at RGM. So I was leading a team of RGM in DACH, and a lot of the topics that basically we'll be covering today, I kind of lived myself. A couple of transformation topics will be very important, so hopefully it will be useful. I will start with a general overview of the RGM landscape, and I think probably most of you know all those pillars, and this is a typical split of the tasks or areas of RGM that they are basically covering. It's pricing, PPA or price pack architecture, promotions, mix, and trade terms. I think it's a very good way to look at RGM. However, by itself, obviously, it creates certain complexity. Because if you think about individual pillars, and in each of them, you have different, let's say, methods, how you approach things. In pricing, for example, in a lot of cases, we're thinking about demand, what is our optimal price point. But then when we switch to promotion and we start like planning our promotions, at the same time, we also think about price, because we cannot really plan promotions without thinking about price points. PPA, we try to balance our portfolio on what we call price ladder, brand ladder, where obviously our bigger value packs per kilo, per unit, or per liter, or per gram, they should somehow cost less to shoppers, consumers. So that means we already start juggling 3 areas, and sometimes it's very complicated. And then we take mix into account. Any promotion that we run has an impact on the mix, and that's obviously becomes a real challenge nowadays. And then that's for the RGM as an area represents, as I said, additional complication. We can move to the next one quickly. I'll start a bit with general challenges that CPG, in our opinion, face today. And these are obviously not all the challenges. There are many of them. But what we can see, and we experienced for the last several years, I would say specifically, acutely, are commodity price volatility. This impacts everything, right? So if we take prices of the raw materials, packaging materials, this impacts the cost of production in the end, and the RGM is the function in the end, or area that has to somehow juggle those costs and smartly pass them to consumers, or maybe be smart about the portfolio, etc. So this obviously represents a significant challenge. Then the consumer preferences. Consumer preferences are always, I would say, fragmented. So everyone would like to have all the choices in the world, very different packaging, but the CPGs obviously have a very different challenge because it's important to streamline the production supply chain. The more SKUs we carry, the more costs we bear. And what we actually, I also experienced myself specifically in the last years was the retail power dynamics. That's something that is very, I would say, salient in Europe when currently retailers, they start to bundle into global alliances and put pressure on the manufacturers, cherry picking the prices. I don't know, when they start comparing the country and saying, okay, in country A, I buy this product for €1, in the country B, I buy it for €2. Explain me this difference and let me have the lowest price. That's obviously a big challenge. And private labels, for sure. For some countries, it's no new news, so to say, because it's been already for quite a while. But for some countries, it's actually just now starts representing a challenge. For end consumer, it's a great news, I would say, because if I'm an end consumer, yeah, I could go and then buy a basic product at a very affordable price. However, for CPGs, it means that they have to innovate and be smart about their pricing strategies as well. And something obviously new, but it always existed, but became more important, I would say, nowadays, import tariffs. Similar to price volatility, it could give additional challenge to, and I would say pressure to the prices. And we actually wanted to ask you to share whether those challenges somehow correlate to what you have in mind, or you have something else that will be really nice to know. We have a poll, I think, there, right, Jonathan?
Yes, we have a short survey, a short interactive element. Ingo, if you would click another button, then the question pops up actually in the top right corner. What are the biggest challenges your organization faces in RGM today? Let me quickly launch the poll. For everybody tuning in via phone, the question is, what are the biggest challenges your organization faces in RGM today? It's a multiple choice. And the answer options are commodity price volatility, fragmented consumer preferences, retailer power dynamics, rise of private labels, import tariffs and trade restrictions, or other. A lot of you are already answering the survey. We are around half of all attendees right now, 60%, 65%. I give you 10 more seconds to make up your mind and lock in your answers, and then I will end the poll and share it with you. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Ending the poll now and sharing the results. Ingo, Ivan, what are you thinking?
What do you think, Ivan?
Well, to be honest, I was expecting commodity price volatility as number one to be. I think that's definitely the one that I was thinking. And it's interesting that import tariffs is becoming quite 26%. Yeah, it's coming up.
Yeah, would be interesting to see like a regional split, because I think that's
Yeah,
a hot topic in the US at the moment. But overall, I think those are the ones that I would expect: commodity price volatility, rise of private labels. Those are the topics we hear quite a lot when engaging with customers. Interesting.
yeah. And definitely, yeah, we can move forward. And definitely, I could confirm that from my experience, these were always number one and number two and number three. So I would say these were always biggest challenges.
Yeah, let's see how to address them.
How we were addressing them.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a bit of a let's move forward to how we could address them generally from RGM, and maybe we can right away move to the next slide, because I think it's a bit of a focusing. So we typically, what we try to do is to split the RGM evolution, and obviously RGM is not something new that, I don't know, companies came up yesterday. It's not a new, so to say, practice. The problem, well, not the problem, was historically it was spread across different functions. It's always that pricing, it's always been done. I mean, promotions, always, all the companies, they were running them for years. But what happened during this kind of initial transformation, the first wave, that the companies start putting those functions together, and that's exactly where we try to right now. Well, I will try to walk you through. And then after, let's say, so to say, the functions were combined or merged, then now companies start looking into how can we integrate the tools and methods, and that's what Ingo will touch later. So we can just move to the organizational integration, and then yeah, we start with so as I kind of connecting back to the pillars that are presented in the beginning, and as I said, many of those pillars and the individual kind of processes, they always were present in companies. Promotions typically run by sales, trade terms, they were either defined by sales, maybe sometimes market finance were involved. Pricing, it was either set up by marketing or finance, etc. So all those kind of pillars, they existed and they were isolated or siloed. What happened during this first wave, and still many organizations they're actually through this journey, is that those functions, they start to work together either as one RGM function. So now we can see a lot of companies, they have a dedicated RGM, NRM, whatever is called function, and they're basically a job called RGM manager. That is one way, or the companies integrated under similar functions, say in finance, for example, but then holistically look at all those pillars together. Then another, let's say, if we move to the next one, another potentially kind of angle of this into change, organizational change, and this is also what I saw personally, is that on some levels, it makes sense to steer this locally. For pricing, for example, although so the pricing is very country specific on the one hand side, because you have local agreements with retailers. In the end, retailers finally define the prices. They could be economic differences, it could be demographic differences, purchasing power. So there are a lot of good reasons why the pricing is localized. At the same time, it already starts moving more to the global steering, and the reason is that going back to my points of the retail being bundling together, is that, for example, in Europe, you cannot now steer pricing fully and 100% locally, because you know that if you do that, the next day a big retailer, they will call another country and they will say, well, there's an exposure because the country A is creating an exposure to country B because we have a price difference. So that's why this also slightly already shifts to the global steering. And for PPA, it's actually now even more to the global steering. It, again, depends a bit on the company, but if we take, I don't know, for example, laundry, detergents, or we take certain categories like confectionery, where the supply chain optimization is very much, it's already kind of globalized. A lot of manufacturing sites are located in particular countries, and it's cheaper to move the product around than to build another factory in a different country. Therefore, defining your portfolio on the global level makes more sense than going and defining your portfolio in individual countries and creating all this complexity. For other categories or segments, like, I don't know, beverages, and if I remember also the working at Coke back in the day, you try to build the factory at the point where you sell it, so in the country where you sell it. So there you have much more flexibility to customize it. So these are kind of different angles. So certain topics become more global, certain things kind of stay local. So I think it's also kind of important aspects of this organizational change. And promotions, I would say, still, at least that's my experience, but it would be interesting to obviously also understand what kind of what is the picture of other markets and experience of other people, but the promo naturally obviously still stays with locally because that's country specific, mechanics are different, regulations are different, so it's hard to globalize it. However, with the data and the tools and what we'll see with Ingo, I think that's also there will be some tendency to make it more global. So we can now if we move to general overview and what we kind of how we look at RGM. We could say conventional versus modern, and that's not saying that one is bad and the other is good. It's just that some companies probably on a different level of the journey, but let's say typically what I would say organizationally, as we said, conventional RGM is the tasks were siloed, and in the modern they are more integrated. RGM becomes much more proactive, offering solutions, coming up with ideas, coming up with profitable ideas, how to, for example, grow revenue, grow profit, etc. Collaboration, it becomes much more cross-functional. So this is now not very isolated function. It's a function that communicates a lot with marketing, sales, finance, supply chain. Obviously, it becomes more strategic. Some companies make RGM a very strategic function on a level of the, say, sales and marketing. So that there's some experience like that. And on the skill side, I would say before it was more hard skills, analytical skills. Now it's much more soft skills. And that's exactly what if I took a typical portrait of an RGM manager, if we move to the next slide, and the important okay, we have Jonathan, we have I think another poll here, right? Sorry.
Yes, I was just answering some folks in the chat, but let me pull up the second interactive element for today's webinar. The second poll, launching it now with the question, which best describes your company's current RGM setup? And it's single choice right now, and the answer options are we don't have any RGM function yet. We are in the early stages of integrating RGM. We have an RGM team, but lack the right tooling, and we have a fully established RGM function in place at the moment. Currently at 40% participation rate. If you log in your preferred answer, you can also choose to not answer by clicking on NA. In the next seconds, then I can end the poll and share the results with you. 3, 2, 1, last chance, ending the poll now and sharing the results. Okay, Ingo, would we have expected that?
Probably yes. I think, I mean, to summarize, I think most would say they're in early stages, so somewhere in the middle, and some already see themselves as very established. I think the fact that we have very few who say that they don't have a function, probably our audience is a bit biased. And when they attend a webinar like this, that means they're already in the topic. So I think that's what I expect. Ivan, what do you think?
Yeah, actually, I agree. I think it's biased because generally, if I would probably take total CPG population, I think there will be more without any RGM function. I think that's still, especially for smaller and mid-size smaller companies, that's probably the case. So
Yeah.
the wave one, so to say, I don't think it's we're done with that.
Let's see, but it sounds like we have a very advanced audience. So I'm
Yeah.
looking for some advanced questions in the Q&A at the end. So if you have anything, or if you disagree with anything we say, we're very happy to discuss that. Just put your question.
Yeah.
Good. So I just
and then
close this.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, let's go to the next one.
Yeah. So if let's say I would kind of present today a picture of an RGM manager, an ideal one, or the one that is currently probably being looked for, is a person obviously that is has a very good data literacy or the knowledge of how the data is working. Because today we're working in the world where with all those pillars, right? We have so many data sources and data coming in, like the sellout data, like financial data, internal, external, whatever, studies, etc. So if a person cannot navigate this complexity of data, obviously it's really a difficult job. Then what if you look here, the rest of the skills what I put, they are much more soft skills, collaboration, obviously working cross-functionally, leadership, and leadership not meaning obviously the person is directly leading people, but it's more indirectly leading people via projects or working groups or squad teams, whatever it is. Being strategic, because in the end, the function is not about solving the operational issues, but thinking about 1, 2, 3 years ahead. And innovative, because at the end, what especially Ingo will be presenting, the RGM is becoming much more into technology nowadays, and even more advanced topics that are being kind of to be able to process this massive amount of data and to, let's say, come up with some solutions that or some ideas or decisions that is becoming more complicated. And I think if you look at this portrait, no wonder why sometimes companies struggle to hire, to acquire good talent, because in the end, it's not an easy skill set to get. It's not something that people get educated. Even if you today like Google formal RGM education, it's actually not a thing yet, right? So that's a bit of a potentially another challenge that is present at the RGM today. So then I will pass the word to Ingo.
Yeah, thanks, Ivan, for discussing or providing the insights on the first wave, what we call. And I think it's for us a useful framework to think of essentially the changing role of the RGM manager coming in two waves. And what Ivan just discussed was essentially the first wave, the organizational change, moving all the different functions that have been mostly spread around the organization into one central RGM function. So coming from siloed organization to an integrated RGM organization. And now we will talk a little bit about the second wave to sort of complete the idea, bringing together the decision making and then also providing the platform, the tools and everything to actually make an integrated decision across all the RGM levers. This is what we'll be talking about in the second step, the second wave. And of course, we know this is more conceptual. It's a simplification. In reality, it's never this clear cut, right? That you first get the organization integrated and then get all the tools integrated. There's massive overlap here and there, but I think it makes a lot of sense to when we try to understand it, to think in these two waves, and this is what we want to do here. And what do we mean by this? We mean by this, and I think this resonates with most of you, is that many of the different functions in pricing have been are being addressed in very different methods. So if you want to understand, or if you want to think about what's my optimal price change, most of us will use price elasticity, typically coming from some regression-based analysis of traditionally coming from a regression-based analysis of sellout data, for example. When you talk about PPA, introducing new pack sizes or maybe new brands, many do this, for example, using conjoint studies or different methods. To correct this, using a different set of methods. Then there for promotion, there's again different tools, TPM, TPO, and so on. So there are all kinds of different tool sets that are being used. And the problem, and what we want to achieve, and I think this is really the effort of the second wave here, is to move into an integrated framework, because in reality, we will be doing PPA, pricing, and promotion decisions together, right? A different base price might work better with a certain promotion than with another promotion, or certain PPA changes allow us to increase prices, whereas other PPA changes don't allow this. So we want to move to a world where these things are much better integrated. And just to highlight with a simple example, why this is important. Here's one, and it's based on a real case that we've seen in a company. And essentially, what do we see here? We have two different methods. One is a more price peg architecture example, where you essentially look at these bubbles here. You have the different product sizes, and typically it makes sense to decrease the price per gram or per unit, or in this case gram, could be liters or something else, with an increase in the pack size. So this is what you expect, and most companies put all their products on some like monotonous or declining function. And this is what we see here. So in this case, an analyst has drawn this picture, and it looks like the 750 gram pack is a bit too expensive in this case because it's above where you would expect it in the line. So this price ladder method would suggest a price decrease, whereas the price elasticity in this case is minus 0.9. So it's between 0 and -1. So that means a price increase always increases both revenue, net revenue, and profit. So the price elasticity analysis produces a different result from the architecture analysis. And this is something we see, and probably you would also see quite a lot when you do these analysis, that all of the different analysis, or you do a price elasticity analysis with sellout data, you do one with conjoint, they produce very, very different results, these different analysis, and the different tools you apply have very different suggestions. And what I've seen also in projects quite a lot is that in many cases, people just take the average of a very broad range of different recommended prices that come from these different solutions. And this is not obviously an ideal case, right? So you want to have something integrated, that one method that really considers all the effects, that also in this case, and this completely ignored with these two analyses, the cross effect. So if I decrease the price of the 750, it would draw some demand from the 1,000, from the 500, probably also a little bit from the 250. And how do you assess all of these different effects? So this is really what we mean by integration. So we want to have some sort of platform solution that covers these differences. And this is just one of many challenges that we have from a tool perspective. So this is this first one, but I think it's the most important one, that we want to have tools that go from a silent view on each different levers, because there's so much interaction, into an integrated view where you can look at all of these levers together. The second one, I think, where we want to move is more from a reactive to a proactive approach, where we're not just sitting there and thinking, okay, something has happened, our costs have increased, our competitors have done something, and how do we respond to that with some simple heuristic? But we want to look at the landscape, the opportunities in our categories, and proactively have the ability to look at price opportunities, other opportunities that are relevant. Also, we want to move from a world where we have low integration of different data sources. So you have sellout data, for example, you have survey data, a conjoint study, for example, and you have these different data sources, and it's traditionally very difficult to integrate the different insights, right? So you look at your full portfolio based on sellout data, but you want to think about introducing a new brand. And the question is, how do you do that? You don't have real data on it, but you have, for example, a conjoint study that tells you how good this brand is, and you want to integrate the insights from a study into a bigger model based on sellout data, for example. And these are things that we want to do, that we want to look at, and have a tool essentially that allows us this integration and other, without going into too much detail. Utilization, we want to have like a full understanding of it, and we want to also, in line with that, move from just analyzing the past, how did my past promotions turn out, for example, versus what are the best promotions, maybe even promotions that we haven't done in the past, promoting different products, different combinations of products, different discounts, and trying to understand how they will do moving forward. So those are the things that are relevant for us. And how do we do that? I think there are probably different approaches to it, but the one we're following here, and this is really our what we call the virtual shopper AI model is, and I won't go too much into details. If you're interested, we're very happy to follow up and show you them and go to more details on the method. But essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to replicate the real shopping behavior of your real shoppers, considering behavioral aspects. How do people respond to price thresholds? Some respond to it, some don't. And we try to get like a behavioral model of real shopper behavior, how people choose between products, and then parameterize that with the context-specific data. How do they prefer brand A over brand B and so on, and use that then to predict how your shoppers will respond to different demand changes. And here, what does this look like? Very simplified. So all the shoppers of these virtual shoppers, and we typically produce, depending on the context, hundreds of thousands or millions of them. They all have different preferences for different brands, different pack sizes, everything. And you can show them different products. You can change prices. You can change product features. You can add a product, remove products. You can do all kinds of things. And based on their preferences, they will respond to it. And here on the right side, what we see is if you make a change in the price, for example, some of them will not keep buying the product if you increase the price, but they will maybe move to a different product. Can't show that here on the slide, but you can see that in the solution. And that allows us to really understand the effects of price changes, not just on the product where the price was changed, but on all the products, and then use it to understand revenue, profit, all kinds of implications. And I think from what we had as an idea, and also what, of course, the feedback we get, this is really what most teams want, have like an integrated solution that allows you to integrate different data sources. So you can integrate sales data, for example, but you can also integrate survey data. You can integrate data on promotions, anything that's relevant to really assess the proper shopper behavior of the shoppers in a certain category. And with this, when you have this predictive capability, of course, you can look at all kinds of optimizations that are relevant. For example, you can, and this is a way we do it, so you can essentially tell the solution what's my optimal differentiated price increase across the products in my portfolio. So this is what this is, and a way to look at the results here is very tiny, but you can look at, for example, the different profit and net revenue increases that different price changes produce. Gives you something like a efficient boundary here, and that tells you how what's achievable, and then based on your company strategy, you can choose the best changes, or the best move of actions that makes sense for your company. So this is just very much in a nutshell what the options are that are available, and I think what it solves is essentially what we think is the core objective in the second phase, moving to an integrated solution that allows having a solution that allows teams to integrate across 3 key dimensions. Integrate across data sources, so giving teams the ability to integrate insights from sellout data, insights from surveys, insights from certain panels into a complete model of shopper behavior to really understand all the relevant aspects. How do shoppers switch between products if you increase a price? Where do shoppers come from when you introduce a new product? Do they come from your own products? Does it even make your profit or revenue worse than before if you introduce a cheaper product? Do they come from competitors? So all of these things are important, so that you integrate across data sources, that you understand, have an integrated view on the sales dynamics, as said just now, where do shoppers come from, and that allows you to then produce an integrated decision-making across the different levers, understanding, okay, this is the best price change together with this PPA change or promotion change. And this is, from our point of view, really the objective of RGM in the second wave, moving from siloed solution to an integrated solution that really allows us to integrate really across the different dimensions. And let me close with a very simple picture here. And if you have a better idea, we're very open to it. This is the one we have right now. So essentially, I think it's well explained what happens is really moving from sort of steering a pirate ship where you're very close to the elements, you need to do like ad hoc work, to managing like a proper cargo ship where you're a bit farther away from the water, and it's much more, you have the proper tooling, you have the proper equipment to do the job, you're much more capable to scale also your capabilities, but the requirements move a bit more towards and I think Ivan already mentioned some of them, moving more towards an importance of data. With the increased ability to analyze different data sources, data becomes much more important. I think what becomes a bit less important are like manual ad hoc analytics. So looking at specific cases, like running specific case studies when you, for example, want to introduce a new product. Once you have a platform established, it's much easier to look at these specific cases. I think we think the role moves a bit more from doing work yourself, manual analytics, to managing a proper team, a proper platform. And what we see as a result of that is an increase in the quality of decision making, of course, not just for yourself, but also for competitors who move towards an integrated platform. So I think that the quality of the game overall will improve. And this is really, I think, the environment in which the revenue manager of tomorrow, then the revenue manager of the day after tomorrow will work. So I think it's two things. And with that, I'll hand back to Jonathan. I think it's the role of the revenue manager of tomorrow is one, facilitating this change, moving through wave 1 and wave 2 to enable the team to build these capabilities. And then the revenue manager of the day after tomorrow is really being able to function properly in this world. And this is what we try to lay out on this slide and previously on the requirements that Ivan mentioned. Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ivan. Thank you so much, Ingo. I think we learned a lot in the past half an hour, and we got a lot of questions, a lot of engagement in the chat. Thank you for that. And let me open the questions that I have. The first question comes from Nicole. Can you give a perspective on a more command control approach, Ivan? Central strategy with compliance expected from the field, for example, sales.
So maybe, I don't know, just to clarify the question, how I understand it, what is being asked is how to implement command control way of managing. So I would assume there's a central team of RGM, how to implement the compliance of the decisions that are being taken on the central level, I guess. If that's the question, then I would say, in my experience, it's always been more the central team working on the guidelines and playbooks and providing, let's say, inputs how things could be implemented on the local teams, and the local teams would essentially execute them or choose from something else. My personal opinion, I think the best synergy, and this maybe is a good example, could be in PPA space, when a global team works on what you call a menu of the options. So to say, you can implement 5-10 packs of a particular product, and the local team would essentially evaluate those options and choose which ones to implement. I don't know whether it answers the question, but I feel like it's without the follow-up, it's more complicated to understand what was actually asked. Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. So I always recommend to everyone to get in touch with you and Ingo via LinkedIn or via email for more deep dive. Looking at the time, I would also go to the next question, Ivan, also to you. When you say modern RGM requires more soft skills than conventional RGM, I guess it would depend on how established the RGM function is. At early stages, soft skills are essential to communicate the value of RGM, and later on, it's smoother sailing. Would love to hear your thoughts.
No, I agree. I mean, that's why I think I was trying to be a bit careful when calling it conventional versus modern RGM, right? It's not that one is bad, one is good, or that I think it's always a mix. Soft skills, I think they directionally they get more value, and let's say they're much more required versus yesterday, which I think you could get away with a simple an analysis, or I don't know, you do like a data analysis, then you present results, and then maybe in a way that's already big value. Today, I think that's not enough. That's not the value. Sometimes the value is how to convince stakeholders why this is a value actually, how to implement it with sales. I think was relating to the previous question, because in the end you can come up with a great analysis, great plan, everything. Let's say what we say in Excel, we can create everything, but then how to make sure that this is implemented by sales on their day-to-day activities, that's much more soft skills than hard skills. That's much more about communicating, understanding the need of the other person, etc. So that's what I kind of meant.
Yeah, thanks for that and for the great question, Natalia. Two questions on the model from Robin and Ufuk. I would start with Ufuk's question, probably posed to you, Ingo. In high inflation markets, external factors can significantly impact pricing decisions. When developing your model for RGM, which external factors did you find have the most significant influence on pricing, and specifically macroeconomic variables like exchange rate, commodity prices, or consumer purchasing power effect?
Yeah. Very, very complex question. I'll just give a brief answer. Happy to follow up if needed. So what we see is that essentially there are different time scales. So there's like the short term, midterm, long term in inflation. In short term, what we've seen, so the demand depends really on or what people will buy depends on their preferences for different products. And these preferences in the short term, and I think that resonates when you think about your own purchasing decisions. When prices increase rapidly, your preferences don't adjust in the first instance. So you go into the store with your initial preferences. If only one product is much more expensive, many people switch to other products. If everything has become more expensive and it's an overall inelastic category, I don't know, like butter, for example, then people will essentially keep buying even with the overall price increase. In an overall more elastic category, overall demand will go down. So what we're saying is short term, typically demand doesn't change this much. Midterm, this can be quite different when people start adjusting their preferences. And as a general heuristic, you mentioned exchange rate and other things. Things that are closer to the category are more relevant than things that are further away. So what I mean by it is you have two categories and both increase prices. One essentially dominates the other and draws demand from that other category. That has a huge impact on the affected category. Whereas things that are further away, like how your income changes nominally in inflation or exchange rates, they have less and slower impact on your demand. So as a general heuristic, things that are closer to the category are more important than things that are further away and affect your purchasing behavior overall, like nominal wage increases, inflation rates, and so on.
Thanks, Ingo. We get a lot of questions. We will make sure to answer all the questions in the follow-up email coming later tonight. Let me get another question, potentially for Ivan. What would you say are the minimum requirements for a successful RGM function in terms of organization, tools, and other enablers?
Well, minimum requirements depends on the size, but I would say you need to put people behind, so dedicated to at least the levers that are important to the organization. And it can be, I think that's the first exercise that I would do, is just to understand on this particular market, which levers represent the biggest challenge or the biggest value. They are not all equal, because in some markets, maybe promotions would potentially drive more value. In some markets, it's price, depending on the inflationary situation, etc. So then just focus on them minimum, and then put at least somebody behind who would focus on them. And on the tools, well, it's a bit of a super broader question. I would say basic analytical tools. That's the starting point, because if you don't have visibility on data and let's say decent visibility, because obviously there's always extremes. It's hard to run RGM because RGM is based on data. I think that's the first. That's why I think traditionally a lot of people from finance, they were entering RGM field, etc. So because the people who are able to work with data, with Excel's analytics, etc. So that will be obviously the starting point. And then after that, you can see whether it actually brings any value or not. And if it starts bringing value, then adding more resources on top and becoming more sophisticated. That's also going to what Ingo was saying, maybe already to prescriptive side. But just starting to understand what you have in terms of the describing the reality and the data that you have, I think that's a super important starting point. I don't
Thanks,
know, Ingo, if you have anything to add.
No, makes sense.
Okay. The other questions, we will make sure to answer them in the follow-up. If you would go to the next slide, we have a little extra for you, for everybody that's still here. We have updated our white paper, the Revenue Manager of Tomorrow, or update may be the wrong word. We have revamped it completely from the bottom up while creating also these slides together with Ingo and Ivan. And we now have an exclusive preprint for you, and you can download it now. I will paste it into the chat. Just here, it's, I think, 15 pages of detailed information on wave 1, wave 2, and the future of revenue management. Thanks, everyone. Ivan,
Thank you, everyone.
last words.
No, thank you, everyone. Yeah, I think liked a lot that there are so many people and the topic is really interesting. So hope to see you soon in the follow-up.